In your research, you document many cases where people do the right thing for the wrong reason. So, for example, 20th century arbo nationalism, one of my favorite words from the book, where many trees got saved in a fit of nationalistic fervor. Does it matter why we're saving trees, or should we just be thankful that they're being saved, regardless of the questionable motives that may underlie it?
Trees have been saved for the wrong reasons, for sure. There's a lot of nasty people in my book, as well as like glorious trees. I talk about the history of a type of protected area called monuments of nature. It started in Europe, Central Europe, in the late 19th century. It was kind of an answer to the American national park. A monument of nature is like very small scale. You're protecting like an individual tree or bog or heath, and it's often for like scientific reasons. And it's a very beautiful idea, and it had a lot of good science behind it. And on one level, you think like, okay, this is all about like kind of subnational, regional, even local sense of place. It's like really beautiful, right? And like, there's no way that could be co-opted by, you know, ultranationalists. But of course, you're wrong, right? If you look at the history of like Third Reich, in fact, you know, subnationalism like Heimat does get co-opted by fascists, and you see this in other instances. You see it in Japan, you know, even like in India and Sri Lanka with, you know, Bodhi trees. Like there are ways that they have been kind of caught up in ethno-nationalism and ethno-nationalist conflicts. How Americans in the early 20th century sort of responded to that European movement for monuments of nature. This is after they created like Sequoia National Park, and groups, especially groups like the Daughters of the American Revolution, but lots of other groups, protected, designated, monumentalized, put plaques around trees all over the country, and they named them. And it was all in service of a very particular white, colonial, a very racist vision of American history. Does that mean we should like tear down these trees? Like, no. Like, trees are wonderful, and it's not the trees' fault. Are we glad trees like that were protected? Of course, but can we do better? Yes. I would say that, to me, like one of the great challenges of our moment now is like meeting that kind of local level love of place with this kind of planetary crisis, the solutions to which are at such a high level, right, politically and technologically. But in a democracy like ours, long may it live, you need voters who feel emotionally about, you know, the Earth system, but that's very hard. But you can feel about local nature. So how you kind of connect the local and the subnational. So I do think there's a role for this, but we should always be wary. Like anything can be made fascist by fascists, right? So even trees. But I do believe that like cultivating local place attachments so that people have a local reason to care about planetary management, because people don't live and feel on those terms, even though we have to be thinking on both levels. And that's a roundabout way of answering your question, but I'm glad these trees were protected, but we can do better, and we must. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that the answer reminds me of some trees close to where I live, the eucalyptus in the East Bay Hills, where sort of planetary consciousness of forest fire management is at odds with the sense of place and the people who have fallen in love with these trees.
Yeah, in my previous book, I wrote a lot about eucalyptus. That book's called Trees in Paradise, A California History. And yes, it was a mistake to bring eucalyptus to California, but it was a beautiful mistake. And it contributes to the sense of place for so many Californians. Totally does not belong in certain situations. It can be a terrible fire hazard, but it isn't always a terrible fire hazard. It isn't inherently terrible. It's very place specific. But you can't go back in time. You know, it happened, and I think for one, and I think as a historian, you have to kind of sometimes, you work with the world that you were born to, right? And you honor the mistakes of the past as well as the things that you agree with, because we're making mistakes too, as well as like leaving a legacy. And sometimes it's hard to know in the moment, right? Like what future generations will make of all of our endeavors, but you just have to keep going and be generous to people in the past as well as thinking about people in the future that you want to be generous to as well.